Hello and welcome to Wellbeing. I'm Oliver Croft. In this edition, we're going to be looking at sports physiotherapy with Joshua Donnelly. Josh is a Newcastle Uni graduate with first class honours. He now works at New Moves Physio while studying a master's degree and leading student physio education. With experience in rugby and soccer, including work with Adamstown Rosebuds Football Club and a South Korea tour, he's skilled in dry needling, exercise rehab and health services. Josh, thanks for joining me today. How did you get into sports physiotherapy?
Yeah, thanks, mate. As a physio, when I was sort of studying, I really knew that I would like to head into the private practice space. A lot of physios physio is a very broad industry, and people either work in like a hospital-based setting or they work in the community, and a lot of us do follow a private practice pathway. And from that, it stems an interest in sort of musculoskeletal physiotherapy. Through sort of, I wouldn't say I had much of a professional sporting or elite. I very much went down the more academic pathway. I couldn't balance both, but I did play a fair bit of sport when I was younger, mainly soccer, and I really enjoyed working with athletes. I like having people who are really focused on a goal, and athletes they're very easy to work with because they want to achieve something and they do what you ask them to do. So they're a great group of people that you can really kind of shape them the way, give them the right advice, and then they take that and they run with it. So you can achieve a lot.
Yeah, okay. So there's obviously physiotherapy and then there's sports physiotherapy. Apart from obviously working with sports people, are there many differences between those two?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of crossover in that kind of working with musculoskeletal space. To be classed as a sports physiotherapist, you do have to earn the titling of an APA titled sports physio. So if someone does say that they are a sports physio, then they would be a titled sports physio, and that's sort of what I'm working towards at the moment with my master's study through Master of Sports Medicine through the University of Melbourne. So look, a lot of musculoskeletal physios who work in the private practice, they work with athletes, but there are a small subgroup of people who are sports physiotherapists, and they tend to work at a higher level. They've reached a level where they've demonstrated extended knowledge with sports, and they tend to work a lot more with athletes.
In terms of sports and performances and those physio benefits, what sports do you typically see that generate the most injuries?
Oh, look, tough question. All across the board, every sport has their sort of niche. Ankle injuries are a big part of football. In something like rugby union, where it's a contact sport, there's lots of variety, but things like lacerations, shoulder injuries, knee injuries are really common. So every sport has their own type of thing. It really depends on the demands of the sport and what people are doing. But for me, working in football, knees and ankles are probably where I'm spending a lot of my time these days.
For parents that have kids who are very active, what advice do you tend to give them?
It's a kind of an interesting question you asked there, because I think in this space we're at the moment, we've got a lot of early specialisation with sport. So lots of kids younger are participating in higher levels of sport and more of a focus on one sport. So like in soccer, we've got like junior youth development leagues. And that means that lots of kids early on are just doing one activity. So my advice for parents with young kids is keep kids doing lots of activity. It's really good, but also watch their load. Kids do need a bit of rest, and there needs to be a balance between what they're doing. If that balance is that they're doing a bit of swimming and some other activity, fantastic. But if it's all the one sport and they're doing lots and lots of hours a week, we do need to have a look, because we are seeing lots of, load-related injuries in children. So we get lots of stress fractures and things where they really resolve around the fact that they're doing probably too much sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. And in regards to those activities, does swimming still live up to that perfect exercise reputation?
Look, swimming does have its injuries. Swimming and swimmers' shoulders is a thing, but most of the time, that balance between some weight-bearing, running around exercise and swimming as a sport, it can be a good balance. We're well suited to swimming here in Australia, especially through summer, but not everyone loves it. But I think it can form a good balance.
You've probably heard this one as a sports physiotherapist. Is the saying "no pain, no gain" actually true?
Interesting one. Yeah, look, lots of people try and push for that. It's definitely, sometimes we have to be aware it's probably a little bit outdated. Just push. It is really important to kind of listen to the body. It's normally that little bit of pain is first telling you that it might be pushing it a little bit too hard. When we look at kind of load these days, we're really looking at graded load. We want like graded load exposure over time. So pushing into pain, having too much pain, probably not quite what we're looking for these days.
All right, so injuries, healing, and pacing recovery, those three all sort of really go together. But is it ever too late to start sports physiotherapy for an old injury?
No, look, at the end of the day, you can always achieve something. So if someone has something that has been niggling or it's stopped them from doing an activity, the end goal of being able to get back to that might seem pretty far away, but you can always build on what you've got. You can, you will be able to make some gains, and if those gains align within the function of that sport, then we're always encouraging them. I'm never telling someone that they won't be able to do something. There's always something someone can do. It might not quite be their activity initially, but if they work hard enough, they can always get back to where they need to be.
Mental health is a massive part of sport, but being out of sport for such a long period of time can be disappointing. How do you support, as a sports physiotherapist, an athlete's mental health?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's a really, really big topic. There's two sides of these. There's the mental health associated with like elite performance and the stresses involved with that. Elite sport is or sports at a high level is a complex where you're working really, really hard to sometimes achieve really minor changes, especially with people like our swimmers at the elite level. They're working really, really hard to make, seconds change, 1% change. And psychologically, that does take a lot of impact on people, especially when maybe if you're not succeeding as you would like to. On the flip side of that, these people tend to work so hard that sometimes an injury, a catastrophic injury that keeps them out of their sport, can be really, really hard as well, and have a drastic impact on their mental health. As physios, two sides of that, we're really trying to promote with those who are at the elite level this concept of well-being, and athletes tend to do that quite well, especially in the elite space. We've got lots of people involved in their care. We might have psychologists or dietitians. We've got coaches and trainers managing their load, so we're trying to optimize their performance. And those who are injured, the same thing. We're trying to use strategies to kind of bring them back down and say, it's not the end of the world. You will get back to where you need to, and focus on what you can now. Heal, recover, it takes time, but if take one step at a time, really small, goal focused, and a plan at the end. I think sometimes athletes really benefit from being able to say, well, what do you need to achieve to be able to go to that next level so that we can then get you back into training or sports participation, and what do you need to be able to do to get back to your sport? So having really clear goals, and as you achieve those goals, then we can set the next one to get you closer and closer. When you have this initial injury and this prospect of like, when am I going to get back to sport? Yeah, it can be overwhelming sometimes. Definitely.
So that stress or anxiety those athletes may be feeling, can that cause actual physical pain?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's across the full spectrum of injury. There's a big psychological component to how we experience pain. So, if someone has a lot on their plate, they are stressed, anxious, it normally contributes to them maybe not sleeping as well, not eating as well, and that puts them in a scenario where they're probably more likely to be injured. Sleep's a really big one. So if you can kind of think, it's not hard to understand if someone's really worried, they're not sleeping well, they've got lots on their mind and they don't sleep well and they try and perform, then they sometimes do run into some problems. So, managing injuries and pain in general, we do need to have a really big look at what's going on and what's contributing to that person, not just the injury itself, but really think about what are the contributors to why they experience their issue. And as a physio, we do have to try and get that information out in that little time that we have. And look, we do have a little bit longer than, say, most GPs. Most of our time we have 45-minute initials, half-hour follow-ups. You do have some time to really pick that apart, find what's contributing, and then try and change that and educate the person. But yeah, you really do need a bit of a holistic approach to managing something, getting them back to sport. So
what I'm gathering, it's all about that positive mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be positive. If you don't believe that you're going to get there, you probably won't.
In terms of tools and technology, is there anything exciting on the horizon that physios will be able to use to enhance their treatment of athletes?
I think if we kind of look at the concept of like helping athletes manage maybe their well-being, this day and age where we have our phones, there are some really great tools and resources and some free apps available for that kind of mindfulness and well-being. So, things like, the Headspace app, which sort of talks about sleep and mindfulness. And there's another Australian app called Mood Mission, which helps athletes sort of track kind of how they're feeling and gives them recommendations based off that. These days as well, we have things like the Whoop wearable, which helps track your sleep and your heart rate and gives you recovery-based scores. So in that setting, there are some things that people can kind of maybe give some data of how they are coping. They might say, yeah, I'm feeling quite well, but, their sleep is poor, or their recovery, or their periodization of training isn't quite there. They're doing too much. And these wearables like their Garmin watch and their Whoop will help them and tell them. In terms of like technology in the physio space, look, the physio space is always changing. We're probably moving more towards the understanding that to get the best out of people, we're really educating them, helping them understand what's going on, and then giving them the tools, whether that's a rehab program, might be some hands-on therapy to kind of build on that and then work towards getting them back. That stuff, that bread and butter doesn't change, like it's just what is simple works.
What is your opinion on foam rollers and massage guns? They're obviously used by a wide range of athletes in a wide range of sports. Are they overrated or useful?
Look, if you look at what maybe the literature says, we tend to find that if we do real control studies and we look at outcomes of muscle flexibility or pain, and we look at pre and post these activities, we don't tend to find a massive difference in the actual change between them, but perception is a big thing. So if an athlete perceives or believes that is helping them, it's likely doing no harm, and therefore it fits in the basket that it's okay. If a person is doing something, they're like, it's painful, but I've been told it's helpful for me, then I'm normally like, you probably don't need that. But, it's a low-cost modality, especially foam rolling, and they do have their place. Most people would say that maybe the conscious effort of getting down on the floor and thinking about what they're doing and doing something proactive, it's still going to be beneficial, even if the science behind it says, well, maybe it's not doing what we think. If they turn around and say, I feel better, I feel like I'm more mobile, great. Yep. Go for it.
Ice packs and deep heat are also both used for recovery. Yep. How do you know which ones when to use on what injuries?
The ice is always an interesting topic. We've seen a lot of change with our old RISA. We've come up with another slogan, peace and love, which sort of promotes not using ice. Probably a big can of worms. I won't get into it here. But again, it's really what works for people. The history would normally say that if you are acutely injured, we normally reach for ice. It still happens, pro level, NRL, someone hits their knee, injures their knee, they're out there with a big ice pack. That's probably never going to change. So ice would normally be used for an acute injury. Things like heat rubs, muscle pain, neck pain, back pain. Again, it's whatever make people feel better. So if they feel like that it benefits either of those, go for it.
Okay, so it's the people's choice when it comes to ice and heat. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, now this is one that will resonate with many people who work in offices around Australia and a lot of desk jobs, because being at school or work often means sitting for long periods of time. Is posture as big as a deal as it is made out to be?
You really get me with a couple of these big topics that I quite like to delve into. Posture is certainly, I think, the concept of an ideal posture or poor posture, it's definitely probably overvalued a little. My big saying is normally the best posture is your next one, and that kind of promotes movement. So you can be in an office job, and certainly there is a level of ergonomics that we talk about, having the correct desk monitor set up. I'm sitting here now, and you've got 5 monitors in front of you. Yeah. It's very difficult for you to set them perfectly. There is some kind of standard kind of rules at the desk that we talk about, and that will make people feel more comfortable. But if you promote that and say, oh, now you have the perfect ergonomics, and you don't promote the movement and you don't promote the relative health and the movement outside of work, they will still have problems. If they're not managing their stress, if they're not sleeping and eating well, and they're sitting at a desk with perfect ergonomics, they will still have an issue. So I think, look, it's important to kind of think about how we're doing things. I actually did a talk on some manual handling stuff to some of the uni staff this morning. I was really promoting that we're probably moving away from teaching people how to lift and more talking about how do we mitigate risks by looking and kind of eliminating eliminating manual handling risk. So that kind of comes back to, it's not really the perfect posture and how we do it. It's more that whole idea of thinking about, moving well, being well, staying healthy to help you do something like a sedentary task. So my advice is get up, move often. Don't be too worried about how you're sitting.
So if you were to invest in a moving desk, would that be more of a gimmick or would it be actually useful?
Yeah, look, no, sit-to-stand desk is definitely going to facilitate allowing people to stand up. The key with that is if you do have a standing desk, you're not there to stand all day either. It's okay to sit, yeah. Little micro habits are another one, taking a phone call and having a bit of a walk around. I'm a real wanderer when I'm on the phone, so it's probably not too bad for me. But, changing your behaviours, take a phone call, go and have a cup of tea, have a walk around, have a walk in your lunch break. They're probably, more helpful than the standing desk. If you can't have a standing desk, you can still walk, you still move around. So,
in terms of ageing and activity and health advice, how does the body change as we go along the course of life, and how does a physio help adapt to that course of life?
Yeah, sure. So aging is just one of those things that happens, and as we age, we definitely tend to become weaker. We slow down a little bit. In saying that, anyone at any age can still reap the benefits of exercise. There's a really great graphic that sort of floats around the internet which shows the cross-section of an MRI comparing a young triathlete to that of a 70-year-old triathlete compared to a 70-year-old sedentary, nursing home bound male who doesn't really do any exercise. And the difference is quite drastic. The 70-year-old's muscle mass is very similar or equivocal to that younger person. It's got nice, healthy muscle tissue without a lot of fat compared to the older person who's sedentary, who has lots of adipose tissue, fat tissue around their muscle, and then their muscle itself sort of looks like Wagyu beef. It's got lots of fat within it. So just showing like at any age you can still gain a lot of benefit, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just doing more than you're doing right now. So if you're not moving very much and you say, I don't do enough exercise, it doesn't have to be unachievable. You don't have to get in the gym and lift heavy weights. Although that is beneficial and it's safe, just starting with something, whether it's a walk or even some more garden work, housework, it's all exercise, it's all movement.
Okay, so if you were that person who hasn't exercised in years and wanted to start exercising again, where would you recommend to start?
I'd recommend, if you really haven't done anything in ages, seek some advice first. So exercise physiologists, personal trainers are fantastic. Come and see a physio. Let us assess you and make sure that there's nothing going on that might kind of rear its head when you start exercising, but at the very little, start small amounts regularly, short walks, achievable walks, a little bit of body weight exercise is fantastic, some standing up and sitting from the chair more than you do. Sometimes I say if you sit down at dinner, go and stand up 10, 15 times instead of once. That's exercise. So small, little changes regularly through the day, particularly if you're not doing much at all.
In an injury, obviously dependent on what it is, when do you use rest versus movement recovery?
Yeah, look, I think there are some times where things do, especially the specific area, need deloading completely. So things like with fractures or stress fractures, these injuries do, like bones, require time without load. But most of the time we are promoting movement, we would normally just try some cross-training, something different. So it's very rare that I'm telling someone, the days of being bed-bound and just laying down until it gets better, they're completely gone, It's all about now of like, okay, maybe that movement or that activity you're doing is a bit too much. Let's try and pull you back. But we're really trying to pull you back only to the level that might allow it to heal so that we can then move forward. And if that is complete rest, so we've got someone in a boot or on crutches, ideally we're still getting them to do something else, whether that's, rowing with their leg out of the rower or they're seated boxing or something. There's always something that you can do.
Okay. And are they injuries that people just learn to live with but shouldn't?
Oh, look, definitely people, experience pain and things can take a long time to get better. We have, chronic pain is a big issue. People do kind of have to learn to live with stuff, especially like, chronic back pain. It would be unwise to say that everything can heal because it's so complex and there's a lot of things that can drive into that. So there are certain times where people are probably learning to have to live with discomfort but part of that and part of working around that is sort of part of the recovery as it is identifying, well, what can you and can't you do, and how can we slowly try and build your function over just thinking about the pain. So, there are definitely things that take a long time and might never get better, but we hope that even as physios or in the health profession, we can help support that person to still do what they want to and engage with life and achieve what they want to do.
Yep.
Maybe with a bit of pain.
And what's the most preventable injury you see over and over again?
Ooh, again, it's hard because it would go against my belief that injuries happen. We know that, injury prevention style programs, they definitely don't. They can minimise injuries, but they can't stop them completely. Probably the desk posture one, the sedentary based stuff, I think it's quite easy to achieve. If you get postural neck or upper back pain and it's primarily driven from sitting and not moving, then it would be very easy to change that mindset of someone. But again, there's some more complexities. How are they managing their stress? How are they doing in their general life? Are they, there's so much that goes into. So I think in general, the advice is that a strong muscle and good flexible mobile joints are less likely to get injured. So everything is probably more preventable by just doing something.
You're listening to Wellbeing. My guest today is sports physiotherapist Joshua Donnelly. What's the most surprising part about your job?
The thing about my job is every day is really different. I can see a different injury. I can see a different person every single day. I think the idea of like the psychology side of things, where you come out as a physio and you're all prepared with these treatment tools that you've got, and you maybe not so well equipped to understand people and understand how people's lives impact them and the psychology of things. So I think that probably is the biggest kind of area where I'm like, that's probably what I didn't expect to have to manage so much and be good at talking to people. And that's more part of my role, is just listening and talking and helping people understand what's going on. And then I've got some tools in the physio toolbox which I use, and exercise prescription, but the biggest part is sort of how much you need to understand the person that's in front of you.
You touched on the physio toolbox there. What does the toolbox have in it?
Yeah, in the toolbox, look, you've got manual therapy techniques, so we use massage. Some people are dry needling therapists, joint mobilizations, specific exercises. In our clinic, we're really big on kind of assessing and testing people's strength first, so that we can provide them with an exercise program we can retest down the track. I think that's really important as well. You want to, if you're making all the effort and you're putting it in, you want to see that you've got these functional gains. So having a bit of data to back that's always helpful.
And what's something you wish more people understood about what physios actually do?
Yeah, look, I think it brings on a bit of an interesting point about physios. Unfortunately, in our profession, a lot of physios do tend to burn out because you're taking on, you're seeing lots of people. The workload can be quite high. There's lots of paperwork involved. And I think that comes from sometimes, frustration from people that they're not getting better. Injuries take time. We're not magic. It takes time, and it does take some effort. You have to participate a lot of the time in that rehab plan. Physios have some tools that might be able to, massage might make you feel better, but at the end of the day, it's probably not resolving the reason that muscle became tight or sore in the first place. So I think sometimes, in the profession, it can be frustrating because people just expect, why aren't I better? So, if I can advice to people is, listen to the advice, take that on board, let us work with you to work out how we can move you forward. But, patience is the key.
Do you think your role as a physio is expanding just beyond treating injuries?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, especially in the sense of like maybe workers' compensation injuries or, the NDIS, we have a very broad role where we act as, sort of somewhat advocates. We listen to people. We're able to link other practitioners involved, so we liaise with their GP, and we can liaise with exercise physiologists and podiatrists and dietitians and psychologists. So because we have that time, sometimes the physio is really that person who can really look at the case and the person in front of you and say, this is what you really need, rather than just, I'm going to the physio and he's going to massage or take my ankle. A good physio anyway would hopefully be looking at everything that's contributing to what's going on and why you might be having pain or injured and what it's going to take to get you back to doing what you want to do or beyond.
And what would you recommend about this job to people who want to become sports physiotherapists?
Yeah, look, having some early involvement in sort of sport, like say for a student, if they are interested in being in a private practice or in the sporting space, there's lots of sports trainer opportunities. Lots of physios who work in private practice are really happy to engage with keen students who want to go beyond and volunteer some time. Myself, I work with the Edgeworth Eagles men's football club. We also look after the Newcastle Uni Rugby Club, and we have students who kind of come along and kind of see what we do, and that interest then kind of springboards them into that space. But yeah, get involved. If you're already a physio and you want to head down that space, there's always private practice kind of positions popping up, so just stay interested and work into it, I guess.
You mentioned working with sporting clubs like the Adamstown Rosebuds. What does that sort of involve?
Yeah, look, I had 4 years involved with Adamstown Rosebuds, and one of my colleagues still works with the club. And what that typically looks like is we tend to provide sort of game day physio coverage. So we're particularly working with the Adamstown Rosebuds women's. So for the senior girls, we provide pre-game treatment, maybe assessment, advice to the coach around how much game time to help ensure that they have a successful outcome, and then we would help manage their rehab plans as well.
Have you done work with any other sporting organisations such as AFL or NRL?
Only rugby.
Only rugby,
yeah,
okay.
Rugby. I had a bit of involvement in rugby when I was a student. I cover a little bit now. I feel more comfortable next to the soccer field. There's less going on that rugby. It's a crazy sport, you know.
Yeah, okay. And so at the end of the day, when you come home, what's one thing that you go, oh, I can't wait to get back tomorrow and do? Is it that social aspect?
Yeah, look, I think, especially in our little team environment, we have a really great team of people. We have a bit of fun. So, you know, work is, I really love going to work. But I like helping people achieve their goals. So I get a real kick out of, you know, people who didn't think they would be able to get back to something, or putting in a plan that kind of you can follow it through. That's effort on both part. You've set a realistic goal. The person has engaged with what your advice is, and they come back and they say, "Oh, I'm feeling better." But I also don't mind if someone comes back and says it's just not working, and we work together and say, "Well, why isn't it? Let's try and come up with a solution and get to the reason why it's not heading in the right direction, or are you still on track and maybe you just your expectations not quite there."
Thank you, Josh, for joining me today. Best of luck with your physiotherapy.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've been speaking to Joshua Donnelly, who works at New Moves Physio and leads student physio education. You can find out more about sports injuries and how physio helps. Head to newmovesphysio.com.au. That's numovesphysio.com.au. I'm Oliver Croft. Thank you for listening, and all of us here at Wellbeing wish you well.